All right. That was not the feel-good movie of the year in 1948, but a good film nonetheless. My name is Benny Foltz. I'm the CEO of Roam Share, the nonprofit organization that operates Heartland Bike Share here in the Omaha Metro, and Bike Link in Lincoln, and the world's most rural bike share station in Valentine, Nebraska. Thank you all for coming out. This is our first time collaborating with Film Streams, so we're excited to do this. Yes, thank you. I'd like to introduce our panelists here. First, we have Cait Dumas-Hein, co-founded Grounded Nebraska, a gravel race and ride, and is the Associate Director of Walk Nebraska, our state's active transportation nonprofit. Cait self-labels as a community cultivator and has spent a decade creating spaces for underrepresented demographics within cycling, and currently, through the entities she represents, Cait focuses on collaboration between the recreational and transportation sectors of cycling. When not in the bike world, she enjoys getting lost in historical fiction novels, spending quality times with friends and family, and most importantly, spoiling her 2 rescue dogs. Thank you, Cait. Next, we have Manne Cook. He's a multifaceted urban planner, community organizer, and cultural entrepreneur known for his passion for biking and his significant contributions to urban design and development. With nearly a decade of experience, he's initiated and led key projects like the Forever North Strategy and the North Omaha Trail, and several creative placemaking efforts, including Fabric Lab. Currently serving as a senior planner at Rynearson Associates, where he focuses on innovative development projects enhancing multimodal infrastructure and a range of area planning efforts. And Manne is also on the Roam Board of Directors. And Clarice Dombeck, born and raised in North Omaha, background is in Black Studies, Sociology, and Urban Studies. Clarice is a community organizer, urban farmer, and creative placemaker, and a mobility and transportation justice activist. She's had the privilege of working on the North Omaha Trail Project and participating in the U.S. DOT's Thriving Communities Initiative. All right. So we'll kick this off with, let's see how many people in the audience have had bicycles get stolen from them. At least one. Yes, okay. So this movie probably was inducing anxiety, maybe. It did for me. How about for the panelists? How many have had bikes stolen?
Most definitely.
Okay.
Like you said, as soon as his bike got stolen, and then he's looking around, and I remember being in that moment multiple times, and every bike is your bike when that happens, and everyone is your enemy for a little bit. So I felt that main character's.
Yeah.
I've never had a bike stolen, but I have had a couple experiences where pieces of my bike have been stolen. So when I was probably 12 years old, I had got this really cute purple mountain bike for my birthday, and my parents got me these little plastic pieces to put like on the metal parts of the wheel, so then when I rode it, it looked like it was a rainbow. So obviously I spent all summer riding that bike throughout my neighborhood, and I chained it up in the backyard one day. And then when I went out the next morning to ride my bike again, the tires were gone. So that was not a good experience. Not just the tires, the wheels. So the cool little plastic pieces that made rainbows when I was riding were gone. So that was a bad experience. And then one other time I'll mention, Manne was there, and I'll partially blame him for this, but this was my first time traveling to Amsterdam, and we had rented some bikes from like this sketchy like bike place or whatever. But anyway, tourist mistake. I did not use both locks on the bike, so it came with 2 locks, and I was only locking the front tire. So then the last night, actually the day that we had to return our bikes, we went out, and myself and another friend of ours, the keys had been stolen, so we could not ride our bikes back to this place we had rented it from. And yeah, that felt very targeted. I was like, they knew we were tourists. They were coming after us. But yeah, those are my experiences.
Awesome.
I've actually been fortunate enough to not have my bike get stolen, but I have had my car get stolen before, which it's returned fine, so this is a happy ending to the story, unlike the movie. Yes. But I remember that moment of like trying to figure out what to do and kind of just bouncing around Omaha, like, where's my car? It's gonna pop up, and then I see 10,000 versions of my car that's not actually my car. So very similar to every bike's my bike, everyone's the enemy, who has my car? Sort of scenario. So I can relate in that sense of losing a mode of transportation.
And I'll just add, I'll confess, when my bike got stolen one time in Amsterdam, some friends of mine knew a bike thief, and I just bought a bike from him. So in a way, I kind of contributed to the cycle. So
it so goes. Okay, well, even though the film was made in 1948, the film still feels timely and relevant. What themes from the film, particularly in respect to mobility, as we saw streetcars, obviously bikes, cars, pedestrians, do you find applicable to Omaha today and or for the Omaha community members?
I would say the first thing that stood out to me was like the multiple close incidents with pedestrians. Like that has happened to me on various occasions, especially walking around Jean Leahy Mall in downtown. So that's what I'm gonna start off with.
I think what was really surprising to me is, you know, I feel like if you've tried to move about Omaha without the use of a car, it's pretty difficult to do in a lot of areas. And there were, hello? Hi? Okay, we'll try this one. There were burdened streetcar. There were so many people who were just trying to get around without having a car or main mode of transportation. And I think that that's something that probably a lot of citizens in Omaha can relate to in that situation.
yeah, I can relate to that. And in some ways, like I actually like watching the film. I thought like, hey, they got it pretty good. Like, you know, people riding in the streets all the time. No one's actually getting ran over. There's some close calls, but like, it was a lot better than trying to ride your bike on Dodge Street, right? Like, never would happen. But I would say that, like, you know, kind of the near misses, like the kid almost getting hit by the car, and that instance in the film where they're driving and it's raining and they're like, oh, the people just jump in front of you and then it's their fault if we run them over, type of thing, is a mentality that I can see in Omaha sometimes as well.
Yeah, I think it was a bus that they were pulled up on and it was really tilted because it was so full. Just showing how much it was used there. All right. The ability to readily access a bicycle for bike is vital for Antonio, and the vulnerabilities he and his family face without one are severe. How do you see bikes or other forms of micromobility or public transit being used to reduce transportation gaps or inequalities?
Well, Heartland bike share, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I say all the time, Heartland Bike Share is probably one of the most reliable transportation systems in Omaha that exists. You know, I think in addition to that, the inequities, that's where we were at. I got lost on the Heartland Bike Share. The inequities of it is like, I think there's something around like 35,000 to 4,000 Nebraskans don't have access to a car. And if you think about trying to get to work, to school, grocery stores, medical centers or key points of interest, like it's without a car, that's pretty difficult. It's pretty time consuming. And so just a bike is such a more accessible aspect of transportation. And in the work that I do, we see, you know, when you think of a cyclist, if you think of a bike commuter, like just picture who you're thinking of who's bike commuting right now. It's probably a middle-aged white guy wearing chinos with a messenger bag, like probably riding a single speed or a fixie, right? And it's not out of choice, it's out of because they're right to ride a single speed bike in Omaha. And so we kind of lose the fact that like not everyone has the choice. Like they have to ride or they have to use the bus or they have to use these multimodal options and they just aren't available to them and they're not convenient and they're not accessible. And they don't connect to the places that they need them to.
There are a couple like really good examples that I have of some programs that I admire. So there's an organization out of Chicago called Equicity, and they have a program that's called a Mobility Opportunity Fund, and they provide stipends to residents of North Lawndale neighborhood in Chicago, which is a primarily Black and brown neighborhood with the majority low-income residents. And in that stipend program, they give funds to residents to purchase conventional bikes, electric bikes, cargo bikes, and even electric cars too. So I know that doesn't necessarily count, but I think that's really a great example of an organization filling these different transportation gaps. Another one that I've come across recently is it's a pilot program that's happening in LA right now, where the city of LA is providing stipends to qualifying residents who are, low income and lack access to their own personal vehicle. They get $150 stipends a month to be able to use in any way related to transportation except for cars. So they can use it for scooters, to rent e-bikes, to take the cow train, whatever they need to do to be able to get out and about, and it really takes some burden off of these individuals' shoulders and off of the shoulders of families, because that's one less thing that you have to worry about or budget about, because you already know you have $150 for transportation. The one other thing that I'll mention, which is not bikes, but it is related to this, is in Kansas City, they have a fare-free program, and their fare-free program has been for their public transit system, and their fare-free program has been in place for, I want to say about 3 years now, and they've seen a significant increase in ridership between like 17% and like 35%, which I think is incredible. And on top of that, there's been additional benefits from residents, because now they're using this more active form of mobility. So they're getting, I think, around like 6,000 to 7,000 more steps per day than the average Kansas Cityan. I don't know if that's what they're called. So not only are they able to use their public transportation system for free, they're also realizing some health benefits from it as well.
Thanks.
Yeah. That gave me the idea about the med center. UNMC has worked to decrease the amount of individual car trips that are happening to their state, like to the employer, is incentivizing and encouraging participation in alternative modes of transportation. So ways that looks like is they institute a carpooling system. They have like an insured ride home. So if you bike there or another way and the weather starts to act up, they make sure that people are able to get home safely. They have more flexible work hours. They have casual days that allow for that. Or one of the ones that I really love is if an employer is having you pay for parking, like to park your car, you are then reimbursed for that if you were to choose a different mode of transportation to get to work. So I think UNMC has implemented a series of these initiatives, and they've decreased the amount of car trips by like 20 to 30% that they see onto their campus. So there's a lot of ways that businesses could start to encourage and incentivize bike commuting and like different modes of transportation as well.
I'll just say one more thing. Talking about incentivizing like less people driving to campuses, UNO used to have a program with Heartland B-Cycle where students were able to get discounted. They were very discounted rates to a annual bike pass. And I will say I'm a student myself at UNO, and in a class last semester, that was one of the things that we focused on was transportation justice. And particularly from like the lens of UNO students, they really wanted to see that discount come back, because not only does it help them and us getting onto campus, because a lot of students don't have money to pay for gas because it's so high, or also just the maintenance for vehicles in general are really expensive. And like I said, most students can't afford that. They're also concerned about their health and the environment and want to be able to have a positive or lesser impact on the environment in that way. And parking at UNO is very expensive. So students don't have the means to pay for that. And I know that myself, I've ended up with some parking tickets from UNO. And if you do not pay those tickets, you can't graduate, which is wild in my opinion. But yeah, somebody should bring that back.
Well, I'm pleased to announce that we actually just came to a 3-year agreement with UNO where all students will be provided $5 annual passes.
Hey.
Yeah, unlimited amount. Yep. So we're still finalizing the deal, but we'll be launching that as early as the summer, but probably start in the fall. And then for those of you that don't know, Heartland Bike Share also has what we call a reduced cost membership program. So if you can't afford one of our passes, we give you an annual pass for $5 also. And we've been doing that since 2018. We're one of the industry leaders in the type of programs.
Okay.
Manny, did you have anything you want to add on that?
The only thing I would add that I was thinking of as you all were speaking was one of the best incentives is good infrastructure for cycling, right? Or for biking, or for just getting around, walking, sidewalks, all those sorts of things. So cities that do that better have better outcomes of multimodal transportation, walking, and those sorts of things. So that sort of investment is really worth it if you want to reap those benefits, whether it's the health or the environmental aspects or the economic aspects of not having to fill your car up all the time, pay for maintenance when the wheel falls off, get a new one, all that sort of thing. So that's what I would add to that.
All right. Final question. The film positions Antonio in crisis among the collective. Within the work you guys do, is this something we still see in our community today? And do you find those who rely on bike or public transit options still susceptible to this type of environment?
I would say most definitely you still see it today. But one thing, as I was watching the movie, that I know, we're all here for the most part, multimodal advocates, biking, walking, whatever. But like the parallel I really was able to draw was like Antonio not having a bike was like someone today not having a car, right? And just seeing the struggle he went through because he relied on that to have a job, to have a bike, to have a house, to feed his family and everything. And today we're so reliant on cars that if you don't have a car, then your life kind of falls into Antonio's situation. But you could try to ride a bike, but back to the infrastructure piece of things is where the city's not quite set up yet for that. So I definitely see a lot of people struggle, like cost burden on the car and otherwise.
Yes, I know that there are still people that face these issues. Like likening the access to a bike to today's car is a huge part of that. But even this week, I talked to a cyclist in Fremont who isn't able to drive a car due to living with a physical disability. And he's having interactions with law enforcement telling him that he can't ride. He's supposed to be required to wear all this safety gear. And so it's just, he's gotten pulled over. He's been cited a handful of times and finally reached out and was like, what's going on here? I don't understand. So there's still very real issues. Going back to the infrastructure piece, active transportation infrastructure is kind of a build it and they will come scenario. So in Omaha, when we put in when the Harney Street Bikeway started to got it in, we had a 150% increase in usage on that corridor because Heartland Bike Share put additional bikes. So there's also increased use of bike share bikes. And so when you give people this option of the city set up for this opportunity of multimodal, they will go for the convenient, safe, and accessible choice. But I will, second what Manny says. Omaha's not quite there yet with making that a possibility and making it safe for people to do it.
Yeah, I guess I have a two-part answer to this question. So the first part is just reiterating sort of what was said about Omaha not having the infrastructure for multi-mobility transportation in a safe way. And High key, the reason for that is because the city of Omaha does not allocate any money in its budget to public transportation, and that's something that I have recently become a advocate for, just because public transit and the infrastructure that goes with public transit is a public service and a public good, just like the police department, just like the fire department, just like the city parks department. But the city of Omaha literally provides $0 to that. So that is creating huge barriers and huge issues in safety to pedestrians and cyclists. And the other part of my answer to this question is yes, and what really, I don't know why this film made me think so much about my grandmother, but it did. So she was from Mount Bayou, Mississippi, and she was a sharecropper. She never learned how to drive. And she was a part of a group of, or the groups of Black people that fled the South during the Great Migration and initially ended up in Chicago. And Chicago is a great city for public transportation. So at that time, she did not need to drive a car, nor could she afford to to own a car because she had 9 kids and she was a single mother. So she never learned. And then once she came to Omaha and did not have that same level of access because our public transportation system was lacking so much, a lot of her freedom and agency was taken away because as an older woman who was living in North Omaha at the time, and I don't remember there being a bus route on her street off of North 34th Street kind of near North High School. But anyway, she didn't have access to public transportation. So this film just really made me reflect on how my grandmother lost a lot of, like I said, her sense of agency and her sense of self and her sense of ability to not only engage in community in a meaningful way. But yeah, those are the two things that came to mind for me for this question.
Could you explain a little bit more about the North Omaha Trail Project and what that encompasses?
Right on. So North Omaha Trail Project completed the first phase, 2 years ago now, which runs from 30th and Ames to 24th and Lake area. Lots of public art project, lots of community engagement, tree planting, flower bombing, so on and so forth, walks, bike rides, that sort of thing, murals, yep. And then the next phase is planned to connect downtown, actually run along Mike Fahey Street, and connect with the Baby Bob Bridge, which is being built right now. In fact, the first segment of the second phase of the North Omaha Trail is completed right in front of 1501 Mike Fahey Street. It's 1 block long. And the rest will come later. And then Clarice is working on that now, so.
I guess what I'll just say about it is that it's a public health infrastructure and a multimodal trail that is used for both transportation and recreation, and it connects to vital corridors in North Omaha, so the North 24th Street corridor and the North 30th Street corridor that were separated by a huge transportation infrastructure development project, the North Freeway, which ended up being underutilized and overburdened the community members that live within proximity to that site. And it's something that we're working on at Spark right now is this Thriving Communities Initiative, which is another way, in addition to the trail, to look at what the impacts of the North Freeway were, and then to potentially, and to look at potential solutions. So there is some federal monies out there through Reconnecting Communities, which really focus on the infrastructure development piece of it. Unfortunately, the city of Omaha and MAPPA did not receive funding in this round of grants, but we are hoping to, or they are hoping to apply again. So all the information that we learned through this Thriving Communities Initiative process can actually be implemented, and it just won't be another plan or vision.
Any other questions?
Thank you. I just have a question about the climate in Omaha specifically and how it impacts the different modes of transportation, because biking and walking is good when it's not winter. But then if we don't also have like buses or other public transportation, how can we fill those gaps?
Oh, so my first, it's going to be infrastructure. It's going to be my short answer to that. I think Clarice kind of noted to this. There are a lot of plans that exist in Omaha right now. We just went through an active mobility plan. They just came out with a zero vision plan, and these are all systems-based approaches to addressing these situations because, yeah, our climate gets very cold. It gets so cold in the winter, but that doesn't stop people from having to get to school, to the grocery stores, and all those things. So this is not a quick fix scenario. This is something that the city of Omaha needs to start allocating funds for to be able to address these gaps and to put infrastructure in place and for us to have the built environment that exists for us to be able to address these needs of our community. And when we're talking about these gaps, it's not just transportation. We need to talk about development procedures and policies, and we need to talk about housing, and we need to talk about food deserts, because those are all things that are interconnected when it comes to these gaps. So bikes are fun, and I love bikes, and I do it in a lot of different ways in my life, but we have all these plans in place, so now is the time for them, or what's next is being able to put the money into the place for that. So there's no quick answer to it.
Yeah, like I think two parts to it, to your question and following up on what you said, is the first part is you can actually ride a bike if you want to, walk if you want to, probably like 2/3 of the year. Yeah, there's the part where it gets like snowy and real cold and no one's doing that, right? But the other part is what you hit on with like the plans, but more specifically land use. How we build the city really impacts how mobile we can be. So if you live within walking distance of a store, yeah, if it's a blizzard, you're not going to walk there. But like any other time, you could do it, and you may do it, and you're more likely to do it, especially if the sidewalks are shoveled and that sort of thing. So I think it's not just about how do you get to the places that exist. It's about building the places that you want to live in, and more walkable places. You'll be able to walk more, bike more, so on and so forth. So.
I guess the only thing that I have to add to that is along the side of infrastructure as well. So our buses still run in the wintertime, right? But if there's no shelter at this bus stop, then are you going to want to go stand in the rain or the snow or the cold and wind? No. So we just can't build a bus stop and say, hey, that's good enough. We have to make it accessible and appeasable for people to be able to use.
And Heartland Bike Share is open year-round, 365, 24/7, and we still get over 1,000 trips every month, regardless of the season. So along with the infrastructure, just making sure that when it's being built, that it's in mind with some people do ride year-round, and there's plenty of cities that are north of us that do it.
Anybody else? Wonderful. Thank you all so much. Thanks for sticking around for the rest of the Q&A. Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening.